All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are talking about learning from loss. Do we really learn anything from exceptionally large losses of other people or ourselves? Sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. All right, thanks again for joining us here at Inside My Canoe Head. We are happy you're all here. We're over to episode 280. We've been going for over 4 years, downloaded in 50-plus countries and hundreds of locations across the globe. Our message is simple. We are here to provide you preparedness information. And so today what we want to talk about is a really important topic because we see loss everywhere. And really, I wrote something today on LinkedIn and posted up talking about the Jasper fires, right? We all seen the pictures of the losses in Jasper, the stories of the evacuation. Now the recovery part starts. I've always said that recovery is the unpopular cousin of disaster and emergency management. Not a lot of people talk about recovery. Not a lot of people work in recovery, or not a lot of people know about recovery. And recovery is the longest, most intensive portion of emergency management. You have the incident response, you have the lights and the sirens, the sexy hits, all the news media are there, the water bombers are flying over, everybody's excited, it's really cool. Once the fire is out or far enough away that the residents can return, there's always a week or so or a couple of days of films of people wanting to get some hits of some crying families and people looking at devastated losses. But then, and we say in newspaper speak, the story moves to the back of the paper. It moves from A1 to D5. It's slowly exiting the news feeds. It's not in your Twitter feed anymore. You'll still see some TikTok commentary about what people are going through, but basically the world moves on from the Jasper loss, just like we've moved on from every other major loss, every other tragic event that we see, we move on. We're on to the next one. The world is a chaotic place. It's only going to stay that way for the remainder of this decade and into about 2032. So because of that, we see this loss regularly, but the question rises, do we learn anything from this loss? Have you, and this is a question we're going to discuss at length throughout today's podcast episode, is have you, from seeing and watching what you know of Jasper, Alberta, or the Paradise Fires in California, or the hurricane that has hit Florida, or the floods that have hit some of the Central American river systems, when you see that loss, does that in any way, shape, or form change your own behavior? Does it make you sit back in your lazy boy with your cup of coffee and think, wow, that would be impactful to me, to my family, how we run our lives, how we intend to run our lives, and I better start sitting back and thinking about what to do. Now, from a research perspective, it's nominal. Researchers have looked at behavioral chains as a result of other individuals suffering a loss. Proximity to that loss does have a higher degree of changing of behavior. So if you have somebody close to you that have suffered a significant loss like a wildfire, your probability of changing behavior rises. But I'm talking rises from a low percentage to a slightly higher, but still incredibly low percentage. The general consensus in the body of research is that it's nominal, which means there's no notable population macro level change in behavior because someone else in a separate community suffered a loss. So in other words, we watch, we Google, we rubberneck on the highway when we see accidents, but then we hop back into our lives, we put the car in gear, we put life in gear, and we carry on, and we don't adopt behaviors. We don't adopt lessons from losses like the Jasper wildfire or the hurricane losses in Florida or the earthquake losses that we saw in Nepal or Turkey. We can just sit here all day and go through a series of disasters over the last 3 to 4 months that have shown up in your feed And then you have to ask yourself, have you even considered making any changes related to what you do, how you do, or even just the thought, even if you don't change anything? If you live in a reasonable rural area and you're exposed to a wildfire risk, I come from the Canadian province of Nova Scotia. Many of my dear family and friends were at risk during the wildfires that happened there last summer. That area of Hammond Plains, Timberley, and some of those areas were not at risk of a wildfire, or the residents thought they weren't at risk of a wildfire. So precautions were not taken. They were not put into the building codes. They were not put into the local ordinances about standoff distance and things that firesmart.ca would tell you, and they suffered a loss, right? So if you live in the province of Nova Scotia, hopefully you learned. If you didn't learn from that, this is a perfect time to sit back and think. So if you don't know just simply about wildfires, let's just concentrate on that one right for now. If you don't know what to do or what your risk profile might be, if you live in a downtown condo, this is probably not going to be your concern. But if you live in a reasonably treed area or at the wildland urban interface in a suburban area, or one step greater, you live in a rural area, you need to go to firestart.ca. And I don't care if you're American or anybody else, go there, and they have the best possible information for you to consider for your home and to look at the things you can do. And it's tiered both by things that are cheap or nominal or zero cost, all the way up to things that will cost you more money but increase your mitigation efforts against a wildfire, right? It's there, it's logical. And again, what we don't want to do when we talk about changing behavioral patterns is try to tell you you've done something wrong. Because often when people are accused of being ignorant or doing things incorrectly, they get the feeling they're being corrected. And when people get corrected, their general response to that is not a positive response, right? If I lecture you about something that I deem you to be doing incorrectly, that has zero motivational value for you to actually correct it. It's more likely going to induce a response from you that this guy's an arse or a jerk and I need to shut him down, right? The idea behind using events like Jasper as education is to tell people to sit back and think. And I use this question throughout all of the books, throughout my video course, throughout my 280 podcast episodes on preparedness. I just ask that question: what does your world look like if X happens? Or what does your world look like if you lose access to X, right? So if you ask yourself that question about wildfire and you live in a rural area, what does the world look like if a wildfire hits the closest forest to me? Your house may be in the middle of that forest. Needs some consideration. Your house may be not near that forest, but the road you need to get to your house goes through that forest. So your house may not be at risk, but your ability to leave or get access to your house could be at risk if the route is shut down. It's about sitting down and reflecting on looking at the losses that happen to other people who live in similar situations to you. If you live in a floodplain or an area that floods and you see flood damage on TV, if you've never had a flood at home, and I've had a flood at home twice, and it is year or more of work to get it fixed, even when you have rock solid insurance. And I did both times with a fantastic insurance broker. Shout out to these people. They are incredible. The Desjardins Group, which used to be State Farm, which used to be Suritas, and now it's Desjardins. But it's really the human beings in the office that I deal with that were exceptionally valuable and defended me when I needed to be defended with the overarching insurance company, and got my basement repaired in a year with great insurance. None of this stuff happens quickly. So when you think about the risk that you're exposed to, a lot of that is based, and we've said this before, about your location. You've chosen to live in a certain area, right? Fair enough. Love it, hate it, why ever you're here you are. It's about looking around and understanding the risks that you're exposed to from a big picture. And then we do small picture. Big picture is think about your big natural hazards. Think natural first. Are you at risk of an earthquake? Are you at risk of a hurricane? Are you at risk of a tornado? Are you at risk of a wildfire, flood? You know the big ones everybody knows about. Those are your natural hazards that when realized, which is the phrase we use in emergency management when it occurs. So if you're at risk of a tornado and a tornado occurs, we call that a hazard being realized. When the tornado occurs, are you at risk, right? And then once you understand your risk, now you got to sit back and say, okay, what can I do to mitigate against that, right? You can't stop a tornado, right? You likely can't build a tornado-proof home. I'm sure you could build a 4-foot concrete wall that could survive a direct hit from a tornado. But realistically, what a lot of the research in home building related to tornadoes is, we know that when a tornado goes through a built-up area, we're going to lose the homes along the tornado's path. There's really not much anybody can do about that. What the research is really looking at, and there's some great stuff coming out of the southern United States on, think of a 100-meter pathway on either side of that. That's what they're trying to mitigate against, right? Because really, a tornado damages things obviously in the tornado, and about 100 meters, which is about a football field on either side of it, gets wind damage and damage from things thrown around in the wind and falling debris, right? That's what a lot of the researchers are working on. How do we build better homes and establish better building codes to make that 100-meter swath survivable and rebuildable or repairable, right? Because what we're trying to do is mitigate against total loss. We know the home that gets hit with the tornado is gone. But if the homes on 100 meters on both sides of it might be damaged, but they're repairable and easily repairable because of how we've changed the building codes, because of how we understand the damage from tornadoes, we can make recovery a lot faster. We can make reoccupation of homes a lot faster and have less disruption in civilian lives. So there's a lot of research looking at that. So you have to look at that tornado. So when you look at the bigger picture, when you look at those major natural hazards, now you have to look about the other hazards that you're exposed to. Number two is industrial. Look around, right? Do you live next to a rail line that carries dangerous goods? Do you live next to a chemical industrial plant? Do you live next to a propane transfer facility where they take it from massive train cars or other shipping devices and put it into smaller events? If you just look around and understand the industrial profile of the area, that helps you inform the level of risk. And once you understand your level of risk, you can then start to investigate and ask questions about how you might mitigate against these types of risk. It's about understanding and gaining knowledge. None of this costs any money, but it does require a time and an investment from you. So you understand the natural hazards that you're exposed to. You understand the industrial hazards that you're exposed to. And then you have to look at the other inputs that are out there. And these are less frequent and less important, but we're talking about cultural, ideological, political, and economic, right? I'm not going to go down the run on those. I've got lots of episodes on those small four. But when you look at natural hazards, when you look at industrial hazards, and then you look at your geopolitical outlook of the area you live in, you get a pretty decent risk profile of where you live. When you understand what you're exposed to because of where you've chosen to live, you then can think about the mitigation measures. A lot of those mitigation measures are talked about in the losses in Jasper. This is why we're using this as an example. People talked about homes burnt and some homes didn't. Homes are built of flammable materials. They tend to burn, right? Over 80% of homes and structures that are lost to wildfires are done because they're ignited by embers, right? Less than It's actually less than 20% are actually ignited by the heat and the direct flame of the wildfire itself. This is how a wildfire spreads. The wind blows the embers ahead and it catches flammable material on fire. If your home has a sprinkler defense system or some gel defense system, or is built out of a non-flammable material, then while you're not reducing the probability to zero, you're taking a great step in reducing the likelihood that you will have a loss or total loss as a result of a wildfire. This is the mitigation plan that you can go down. That's why I return to firesmart.ca, because these folks are the experts, right? They have it there for you. They can tell you, it tells you clearly what to do. Simple thing is creating that defensible area around your home, right? So nothing flammable should be within 10 meters or 30 feet of your home. I don't care. Nothing, right? Think about you take care of protecting the home, but then you have this nice wooden deck. The ember lands on the deck and your deck catches on fire. Your home doesn't, but then your home eventually does catch on fire because the deck is fully engulfed. When you look at it as a total package versus that risk profile, you understand. These are lessons we take from disasters when you pay attention. When you look at that total loss. The other lesson that we're going to have to talk about today is what recovery is really like. What is recovery really like for those that are now starting the journey of trying to figure out what to do next? Now, I talk about it at length in my podcast episodes, in my book and my video course about how to begin the process of understanding what recovery will look like for you when you construct an evacuation plan. But the end result is the greatest risk transfer you have right now is called your insurance policy. And unfortunately, what most people do when they buy fire insurance, if you, at least here in Canada, if you have a mortgage, the mortgage company will require you to have fire insurance. What the vast majority of people do is they simply go out, they shop for the minimum liability that's required by law, they look for the lowest bidder, they sign the form, and they go away. They're just interested in getting the minimum insurance they're required and to save money. The problem is the reason the premium is as competitive as it is because of a whole number of exclusions and deductibles that you're likely not going to be aware of until such time as you're processing a loss. At that time, you'll probably find out exactly why your insurance premium was so low or was so competitive. And that, unfortunately, is the lesson many people in Jasper are going to experience when they realize the conditions of the loss. And so I say quite clearly that the first thing you can do to set your family up for recovery, other than having a robust evacuation plan, and in Season 9 and Season 10 of this podcast, we've got many episodes on evacuations and how to conduct that plan. But intimately knowing the contents of your insurance policy is your greatest weapon, because what that provides you is an absolute roadmap of what it will look like if you have to process a total loss. You've bought this insurance to cover that. You might as well take an hour, pull out your policy and figure it out, and then create a list of questions, because I'm not lawyer speak, right? That's not my expertise. So when I see a bunch of gobbledygook that makes no sense to me, that's why I pay an insurance agent, right? I come up with a bunch of questions. And I've done this. I've called my insurance company and say, hey, listen, I don't know what this means. This is what I think it means. Can you tell me, am I correct? Right? But understand, number one, I'm assuming you're covered for a wildfire loss, right? Does it matter how that wildfire is caused? If that's human-induced or caused by arson or terrorism, will it be an exclusion in your loss? These are intimate details that you need to know. And in addition to that is, how is the recovery process for your residents going to proceed? Obviously, you'll need an adjuster, you'll need a claim, they'll need to come out to the site to verify that in fact the house is gone or it's damaged to the point where it can't be occupied. Then do you have the ability, did you buy the part of the policy that offered you the ability to walk away? Now, it's called different things in different jurisdictions, but essentially what it means is the insurance company will simply buy out your property. They'll pay you fair market value. They'll pay off your mortgage for you. And then they'll give you the remainder of the amount and you walk away and you basically go somewhere else and restart life. If you don't have that policy, then you're going to be required under your insurance policy to rebuild, which means the whole time it's being rebuilt, which in today's world, with the total work, with total employment being happening right now in the trades, there is no surge capacity of repair crews to come in and rebuild your homes. So the people who are going to come rebuild your homes have to come off of an existing site. There is no such thing as extra construction crews that can be brought in to repair a burned out homestead. It has to be from something else. So they're going to be expensive and they're going to take time. The average, if you're lucky, is it will be 2 years to get back into your home. While that home is a hole in the ground, you still have to pay your mortgage payment, right? You still have to pay your property taxes when your house is destroyed. Now, what your insurance company does is it pays for a replacement residence, right? The difficulty you have is look at Jasper. Jasper has next to no vacancy rate at a good day before the wildfire, right? There is no place in Jasper for all of these residents to rent a replacement apartment or a replacement townhouse. What that means is, if you understand, Jasper is a long way from everything, right? There aren't communities in and around Jasper that have this exceptional capacity. So people are not going to be able to live in Jasper while their house is being rebuilt in Jasper, which means, does your insurance policy cover a higher cost area? Right? The end result is, if you ask your insurance company today, how much per month am I covered for a replacement residence? You need to know that that's not in your policy. That's something they calculate based upon market value at the time of the loss. So you ask them right now, and then you have a quick look around, because it may not be sufficient to cover what you want or your needs. So now not only are you paying your mortgage and your property taxes for a hole in the ground, but you're also subsidizing the insurance coverage for additional. So it's now costing you money to live away. The second thing is, what if you have to live away, but your employment isn't? I'll give you an example. If you worked in a facility in Jasper that was not destroyed, so your business will reopen and your job will reopen, but you now have to live 2-hour drive away because that's the closest place you could find a residence, how's that going to work for you? Do you have that commuting time in your budget? Do you have the money for the gas of commuting time? If you start to see that it's a little bit more complicated than you think, and then is that additional coverage covered in your insurance policy? Is there a limitation on time? Is there a limitation on type of housing? Is there a limitation on things you are unaware of? Understanding step by step exactly how this policy will be executed in the time of a total loss, that's your responsibility. I'm here to tell you right now, if you take no other lesson away from Jasper, the time to figure out exactly what your duties and responsibilities are under your insurance policy is not after your freaking house burns down, right? Sort it out. Figure out exactly what your insurance policy covers, and is that going to make you and your family happy? Is it going to meet your needs? If it's not, you're going to have to purchase the extra insurance. The frame we have around insurance is wrong. Insurance is an investment. It is not a cost. If you change the look of, I've got a $500,000 house and I'm penny pinching on the insurance to cover the house, well, you're going to hurt that pain you're going to feel that pain in the unlikely event that you have a loss, right? So you invest in higher levels of insurance because the possibility out the other end is far better than feeling what the people in Jasper will go through for 2 years of recovery. Part of that recovery process then is also, if you have to relocate your family, what about your spousal employment? What about what activities or education that your children are in? How is that going to work? All of these things are important considerations that the people of Jasper will soon realize, especially the people with total losses, or even another difficulty that's very important, that if you have the inverse of what I just spoke about, your house survived the wildfire, bless your heart, but your place of employment burned down. So you can return to your home, but you have no place to work. Are you ready for an immediate loss of income in your family? And I'm pretty sure your house, you don't have income loss insurance. You can buy things like that, but the vast majority, I would say 99% of the population does not buy insurance against income loss, right? So if you get fired from your job, do you have an insurance policy that will continue paying your salary for a period of time? They're available. Nobody buys it, but it is available. You can get insurance for anything, pretty much anything you want, other than driving a boat through the Persian Gulf right now. But really, what happens when your house doesn't get destroyed in the hazard, but the hazard destroys your place of work, and now you have no income? That gets back to your trifecta of preparedness plans that we talk about on this podcast all the time. You have your evacuation as one of them, but the other one is, what happens when you get fired tomorrow? Is your family financially ready to rock when the primary source of income ends on a moment's notice? Doesn't matter why. We could come up with 17 different reasons why the income ceases. The task that we lay out for you is, what does your world look like when that income is lost? Because people in Jasper have lost their house or lost their income, or they've lost both. You have to be ready for both of those contingencies, potentially at the same time. It doesn't require a monetary investment, other than obviously investing in insurance. If you have a home, you would do that. But it's time and effort to lay out what this would look like for you and your family, and what strategies you would employ. Now, we've done a bunch of other podcast episodes on financial loss and how to set up your pivot plan, what you're going to move to, how to figure out what kind of security funds you need. That's all in a separate idea. But the thing is if you think about loss, it's not all about physical structures. It's about your income. And don't forget, if you're a renter, this is no different, right? So you need to have renter's insurance. Everybody does. I don't care if you eat beans and rice for 2 weeks to pay for it. But you need to have renter's insurance so that when you get out of your apartment, because the building burns down, I mean, maybe not a wildfire, just, the jerk in number 104 decided to cook fries on the stove and went to play video games and forgot about it and burned down the building. You want to make sure that, number one, you have contents insurance to cover what was lost. Now, your contents insurance will cover replacement value or depreciated value. You can buy either one of those policies depending on what you prefer. Obviously, we recommend that you have a replacement value, but you can also buy insurance for renters that covers the cost of relocation, which means you're going to, first and last has to come up. If you go to another apartment, that individual's going to ask for first or last. Do you have insurance that covers that transition or provides some type of economic support to that? All of these things are available in complex insurance policy coverage that you can get on the market, but you have to look at the entire process of, I get out of my house with the few belongings that I could grab. And if you do it properly, then you've got that list of things, etc. We've got evacuation checklists available. You do that, you get out the door with your stuff. You're standing on the sidewalk, your house burns. There's an entire process of activities that have to happen to get you into your next apartment. Do you have insurance to help you with all of that? You walk through every step that's going to be laid out, and then you look at possibilities to mitigate it. Because what insurance does for us, again, it's our number one risk transfer. We pay a policy premium for the policy that does exactly what we want it to do, and for that, we get the benefit of coverage in the unlikely event that something significant happens. So whether you're a homeowner or a renter, insurance is just as important, right? So all of that covers. We haven't even talked about the emotional stress and loss. The power of social capital, the power of your community, the power of close relationships is how you get through things like that. I am not a mental health expert, but what I am is somebody who has studied the effects of disasters on people's mental health and their ability to resurrect their lives and carry on. And it is clear from the research that efforts taken ahead of an event to have positive, strong networks of friends and family, which what we call is your strong social capital, having that present is without question your number one resource when it comes to high, stressful, and impactful mental health events, right? It's not necessarily having a therapist, so there's nothing wrong with a therapist. It's having a strong set of family and friends that you can lean on to talk through, walk through, and work through your issues is your number one resource, and that needs to be in place, which is why we talk about at the beginning of preparedness, there are 3 things you have to sort out: your physical health, your financial health, and your mental health. You need to take positive control of all 3 of those before you even start considering about household preparedness plans, because without having control of yourself, you're really not much good to anybody else. If you are out of shape, stressed to the nines, and broke, that's not the time to start entering a chaotic situation, right? If you're already stressed out and anxiety levels are exceptionally high, how are you going to navigate a crisis, right? You're going to fall down like a deck of cards and be useless. So we advocate for accepting responsibility and taking control. But if we look at summing up what we talked about today, is we don't learn very well from loss. The opportunity is there to learn. The lessons are laid out for us, but the evidence is clear that we don't. You have the opportunity to be different from it. Take this example of Jasper in Canada, or Paradise in California, or a flood wherever. Take an event and a disaster that devastated the lives. More Oklahoma tornado. It doesn't matter. That devastated the lives of families, and sit back and look through. Understand your risk profile, from natural hazards to industrial hazards to the big 4 of cultural, ideological, political, economic threats, to get an idea of the risks you face. Then you make up a mitigation plan to deal with that. But then you look at the big things: losing your access to your residence, or losing your residence and losing your job. You have to be rock solid ready to handle one or both of those at the same time. And the biggest piece of risk transfer you have is insurance. So get the right insurance. Invest in insurance. Don't think it is a cost, but an investment. Understand it intimately well. If not, ask hundreds of questions to your insurance agent to set your family up for success. You do all of that, and you will have learned a great lesson, and you will have put you and your family in a position where you will be best able to navigate that disruption we all hope never happens to you. But that's what the people in Jasper thought too. That's what the people in Paradise, California thought as well. And that's what the people underwater in the United States right now and Puerto Rico are feeling, right? They didn't think it would happen to them, and here they are. Preparedness is all about taking the time and effort ahead of a possible event and getting ready so that if that event does occur, you are ready to take care of you and those you love. Because it's all about taking care of each other and our communities so that we build resilience and bounce back better. So thanks again for joining us this week at Inside My Canoe Head. If you drop over to our website, www.insidemycanoehead.ca, it has everything about this podcast, even an opportunity for you to buy me a cup of coffee if you appreciate what you hear. And as well, over at preparednesslabs.ca is our primary landing page for our corporate business. Have a look over there. Tell us what you think. Drop me a line at jeff@preparednesslabs.ca. I answer everyone personally. I don't let the staff around here touch those. Those are mine, because if I build trust with you, one of the elements is that I need to be able to answer the questions that you have for me in an honest and forthcoming manner. So I will do that in as fast as time as I can. Thanks again for joining us. And if you do nothing else today, I ask you that you share that Inside My Canoe Head exists with your friends and get them to listen. Don't make any money off of it. There's no ad revenue on this. We just want to spread the message of free preparedness information to help you build resilience and to navigate this crazy decade of the 2020s. Take care and stay safe.